Right, so thanks for joining today. We're going to be talking about back to school and swimming preparation and sort of how maybe I can help with that. My name's Alison Bell, for anyone who doesn't know me, and I'm quite looking forward today sharing with you a pilot that I did in a school back in July. So hopefully you'll find something sort of new there really, which might be helpful to you. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to revise the Swim England School Swimming and Water Safety Charter and SwimPix products that can be used to support this programme. We're going to share the pilot delivered at Alderwood Primary School, teaching water safety in the classroom and hall. And I have to say I was really excited about that as to how sort of well it was received and what the children learned. So that should be hopefully some great information for you. And what we'll finish off is just discussing how to prepare for school swimming lessons to support them being effective. And that can also be relevant to other swimming lessons that you're running. So let's just have a look at the School Swimming and Water Safety Charter. So this is, I think, an amazing tool for swimming lessons and providers. There's two schemes. One is called School Swimming and Water Safety Foundation, which is this sort of cog here. And this particular scheme is for schools with special educational needs and disabilities. This scheme over here is for primary schools. So each scheme has the aims for the national curriculum. As you can see, these ones you're probably more familiar with, but these ones have been set for the foundation so that they're achievable. And what we've done here is we have illustrated this with two cogs, so you can kind of see how they fit together. So the foundation has 5 different core awards and a water safety awareness. The school swimming has 6 core awards. The aquatic skills, which I really like, it's got quite a lot of mini polo in it there. And there's also a self-rescue award, which gives all those skills with the water safety. So on the foundation, awards 4 and 5 are very comparable to 1, 2 and 3. Here on the schools programme. So if you're not joined up to that, you can go to the Swim England website. If you just Google Swim England School Swimming and Water Safety Charter, the link comes up. And there's a lot of really useful resources for planning, registers, lesson plans, all sorts of things there for you. Another resource that you might find really useful is the book that A-Swim have produced. So our red one, Break It Down, is specifically for school swimming, and this is available from our online shop. In this book, there's practices and teaching points for all strokes, core aquatic skills. It includes water safety and also mini polo. We've also got social stories in there about swimming lessons for children that suffer with anxiety, so that might be a useful thing to do. We've also got things like pool rules in there that can all be taught in the classroom. So there's just a couple of resources that we can use, to help us plan. So let me talk to you or share with you a pilot that we ran in July this year at Alderwood School in London. And maybe you can consider using some of this to deliver school swimming in the classroom or in the pool. Some of it you can transfer to the pool as well. So we ran 3 sessions at the school. These pupils were, like many others, unable to attend swimming lessons during COVID. The teacher was really quite suspected, I think probably the best word to use it. A lot of the children in her class, they were year 3, would be unable to swim just due to the area they were in and possibly not having access. So on this project, we did use our schools pack, our SwimPix pack for the schools, and some other resources, a bit like Blue Peter Special, but we did make some other resources that worked really well. So I'm going to share the content that we did. So lesson plan one was in the classroom. And if I just explain how I've set these out, we've got the outcomes at the top. We've got the outcome in this column. We've got the resources we used in this column, the method that we used to deliver, the pupil activity, and then the assessment when applicable. So what I did on this first lesson is we did fill ice cold water, because a lot of children don't understand water safety, the effects that ice cold water can have on your body. So I took a bucket in with bags of ice from the supermarket. I used my SwimPix card from Award 3 in the pack, the school's pack, and they had goes, as you can see here in the pictures, of putting their hands into the ice cold water, which they absolutely loved, I have to say. Some of them told me it wasn't cold, but I knew they were lying. So freezing cold water. And then what we did is we sat them down, and then I taught them to breathe, to sort of treatment for that. So it was a breathing in for 3 and then breathing out to 6. And we said with that, you can regulate your breathing. Worked really well. We then put them into small groups to identify water safety awareness in and around the home. These are the resources we use. So in Award 3, in this pack, we've got lots of situations that can be spoken about. So you can see the list here. I won't go through them all, but we had this list. They all had a little group. We gave them a few minutes to talk about it, as you can see in the pictures. And then they were really quite confident at coming up and talking about what could happen and giving feedback to the group. I have to say some of them had some tall stories to tell, but it was very entertaining, and they did come up with some really good information. So the third part of this lesson in the classroom was learning the beach flags and when it's safe to swim. So I took my flags in, and these were in Award 1 of the SwimPix pack with the storyboards. And we've also produced a little worksheet that they could take home and do. So this part of the lesson, we had them standing up. So when we had the black and white hard craft zone, they were actually standing doing surfing, which again, they had a lot of fun doing. If we showed the red flag, they would just shake their head, maybe shake their finger to say they weren't going to go swimming. If I put the red and yellow flag up, that was a swimming zone, then we got them to do some breaststroke arms. So again, they were just practicing some of those movements. And when we showed the windsock, they put their finger up, they got them to blow on it, so that they could know that that's the way the wind would be blowing, and that's the way the flag or the windsock would be blowing. So we mixed that up. We had a bit of fun with that. And this also is in Award 1, Outcome 7, and Award 5, Outcome 9. So it's a little bit of ticking off there that you can do. The last part of this lesson was to identify water safety awareness at the beach. So we had these 4 SwimPix cards. So it was at the deep water. So what happens if you got out of deep water? What happens about the waves? What were the things that might happen? We talked a little bit about rip tides, which I'll show you in lesson 3. And we also talked about tides going in. Now, with these red flashes, in the Break It Down Red book, there are a couple of pages where these cards are in, and then there's some discussion points about what dangers to be aware of at the beach. And this also is linked to Award 3, Outcome 8. So in that lesson, we actually covered quite a lot of the school swimming charter, and they actually had a great time. This was the handout that we gave them at the end of that session, so a little bit of literacy skills, just writing in the correct title under the correct flag. So again, that could be used as a little reminder at home, and it could also be used as assessment criteria. So the following week, we went in and we had a 30-minute session in the hall. And our outcomes were for this one, the first one was to learn the 4 key water safety messages. So what I did is I put them out on one of our storyboards. And then we did this activity here. So The first one, if you fall in, float, breathe, relax. We got them to lay on the floor. So you can see on this picture over here in a star float. And we practiced the breathing that we'd done the week before, which again worked really well because we were consolidating what they'd done. Always swim with an adult. They got into pairs. And then we did talk about who that adult might be, just to sort of make them aware of that. We had swim in a safe place. So I actually put up, so if you look at this picture down here where I'm pointing to, I made a little zone in the hall with some benches, and they got in between that safe swimming zone, and then they practiced any swimming they liked. Some of them did front paddle, some did breaststroke arms, some did front crawl. So that was quite nice to see. If someone was in trouble, we got them to make a little phone call, as you can see, as I'm doing here. And what was quite useful, again, we played the game, switching it around, and gradually as we played the game, they definitely learned those 4 key water messages. This next bit, trying on a life jacket. I have to say, I had 2 life jackets at the time of doing this, and I've now got about 6. I might even have 8 actually, because it was so successful. And I think as swimming teachers, getting children to put on life jackets kind of makes it a cool thing to do. And they loved being able to put their legs into these straps to stop the life jacket coming up. And I probably could have done 30 minutes of them trying on life jackets and had them engaged the whole time. But here I did a demonstration. We then, the last part of this lesson, we did learn some self-rescue skills. So because they were unable to go into the pool, we did some sliding entry from benches. So you can see here, we just slid in thinking about what might be underneath us. We did survival stroke, which you can see the SwimPix card here. I know it's quite small, but it's like a long doggy paddle. So we did have them up, having a go at the arms. We also had them sitting on the floor, keeping their head dry, kicking their legs and practicing keeping their legs nice and straight, which again was really useful because we could all see their legs and whether they were kicking from their hips. We also got them to hold a floating object. So we had balls and 5-litre bottles, as you can see them holding there. We also spoke about the importance of not losing heat out of your head. And the last part of the lesson was action for help. So putting our arms straight up. Many of the children, when we questioned them, wanted to wave, but as we all know, that might be I'm having a nice time. My arms straight up means I'm in trouble, I need some help. So that was our second lesson. And we gave them another little handout with, again, literacy, where they could write them in. Or the other thing they could do is have arrows going towards different SwimPix cards. And again, we've got the assessment criteria down here that it meets. So on to my favourite part of delivering this session. So we had, what I did is I wanted to create something more visual for the whole session. So I got myself 2 king-size sheets, a pencil, a bit of string that's about 500 millimetres in length, and a pair of scissors. And what we did with this is with each sheet, we folded them in half and then half again. And on the corner where all the folds are, we had the bit of string attached to the pencil, as you can see here. And then we drew a semicircle round on the corner, and then I cut that out. And what that gave me was over here, we've got a fish pond or a paddling pool. We've got a wave machine where we can practice the huddle. And if you fold these in half, then you've got riptides, which was a real asset. So let me show you what we did with those. So on our last lesson, 40 minutes in length, we revised the beach flag game, which we did in the classroom. We then revised the 4 key water safety message game, which kind of got them warmed up and focused. Then the lesson was then about applying those 4 key water safety messages and self-rescue skills in water-based situations. So again, this can be done in the hall, or you could transfer this to the pool. So some of the children wore life jackets through the session, and we shared that out. And I also displayed the 4 key water safety messages. I'll come back to the handout at the end. So the first scenarios were, we had the fish ponds, so our circles that we made, and we had some balls. And we talked about what happens if a ball lands in a fish pond. And then we've got the kind of answers here that you can, you could talk about. But one of the most interesting things about this session was most of them to start with said, lean over and get the ball out. But by the end of that session, we made it quite clear that we need to call an adult if we're going to get that ball out, or we don't get the ball out, but where is our adult to help us? And they all went away learning that. So that in itself may have well saved their life one day. We also talked about fainting in a paddling pool. So if they found someone face down, so we're talking about that you can drown in a very small amount of water, but just rolling them over so they can breathe and then calling an adult. And again, you could spend more time on them having a go with that with each other, but both were very valuable. We then in the gym, I'd set up our big sheets, but folded them in half. So we had them as rip tides. I actually put some little surfboards, or took some little surfboards with me, not essential, but it did work well. So we had them swimming in pairs. And what we had here is they'd got caught in the rip tide here, and they kind of whooshed up the middle where the current would have taken them out. And then the key thing was that they turned sideways to get themselves out of the rip tide. They did get really excited about whooshing up here, so we had to do it a couple of times so that they did remind them that to get out of it, we needed to move sideways. But they had a lot of fun. And again, I think they understood if that happened, how to get out of it. This last section, what we did is we put both of these sheets out in the gym. So we had 2 groups. We split the class in half. And then in those 2 groups, we split it half again. And we had them sat around the sheet, a bit like if you use the big circles, the umbrellas. And that worked really well. And what we did is we had the other half of each group in the middle, and we taught them holding the arms around the back for the huddle, doing our action for help. I'm using SwimPix cards there to help them. Once they understood what the huddle was, these children got up and made the wave machine. And again, they were very excited. So I had to say sometimes the wind wasn't blowing quite as hard, so the waves would calm down a little bit. But they loved this activity. They all learned how to do the huddle. They all learned how to action for help, and a little bit of visual about being caught in the waves. And then we swapped over. And that worked really well. We did give them this as, again, little home learning. So we thought we'd go a bit of colouring this time. So making these life jackets a cool thing to wear. So we had colouring in here on the life jackets. And then if they were on a boat, again, just to clarify, they would colour in their life jackets to make sure that it's so important. If they were in this scenario, they had the life jackets on. And then this part of the worksheet was all colouring, but getting them to think about what would happen if they fell out the boat. So we've got our life jackets colouring in to, again, to make sure that they're okay to be in the water and they'll keep us up. And then we follow the arrows to kind of consolidate what they'd learned in about possibly if they'd fallen in, they need to float, breathe, relax because of the cold water shock. Maybe take up the help position or hold on to that boat, and action for help. So again, they can colour in the steps that they would do for self-rescue. So this is sort of planning for lessons. And I know, Thomas, you're sort of involved in sort of perhaps not school lessons, or maybe those as well, but you're sort of perhaps learn to swim. But having sort of your programme, I do think that this school swimming water safety charter is actually really good for making children safe in the water. It's all very achievable for schools. So it's like a really good planning tool to have. I think that's where a lot of school swimming goes wrong, because planning doesn't take place. A lot of teachers teach off the top of their head. So again, you don't get effective lessons really. It could be that you use our Break It Down book. You can use the SwimPix cards, they're all in the pack, about what will you do or what will you find at the swimming pool. And for children, particularly on the autistic spectrum, that planning itself can make it far more achievable when they actually arrive, and a nice first safe lesson. Pool rules are always, I think, quite difficult to do at the beginning of a lesson. I think the SwimPix cards kind of help, again, to go through that perhaps in the classroom, or even at the beginning of each lesson, you could just show them a pool rule and then, you know, kind of build on that. You could consider doing some of the Alderwood Primary School pilots. As I say, some of that's easily transferable into the pool, but if you do have classroom space, it's a great way of getting some water safety education, particularly for those non-swimmers, because one of my issues with school swimming is quite often it's the children that can swim that get to do the water safety, and the children that don't swim have swimming lessons, but sometimes the education of not going near a paddling pool on your own or a fish pond might save their life. So those things can be done in the classroom. Things like storyboards, so everybody knows what they're doing, from the teacher to the swimmers to the parents. So it's very, very clear what you're doing. Really well delivered planned lessons are the key to a successful programme, and also attainment, where we are doing recording. So again, if you join up for this water safety charter, you can access, I know this is quite small so it's difficult to see, but here are all the different awards, 1 to 6. And you've got the aquatic skills award and the self-rescue, and you can put the children's names down here. The outcomes are on here and you can tick them off, and you can get that as an Excel sheet, which I think is brilliant for attainment. And if you've got Ofsted, then that sort of helps there. Thank you for tuning in and listening today. I do hope you found that useful. So we have revised the Swim England School Swimming and Water Safety Charter and SwimPix products that can be used to support this programme. I've shared the pilot delivered at Alderwood Primary School, teaching water safety in the classroom and hall, and we've discussed how to prepare for school swimming lessons to support them being effective. Our next session is next Thursday, the October the 21st, and we're going to be talking about keeping learners engaged in the swimming lesson. So it's the same time, 12:45 to 1:15, and I look forward to seeing you then. Bye for now.